Hi, this is Chanel. Hope you're doing well. I hope you're having a wonderful day. In this video, I want to talk about games that adults play. Okay, so when I was in elementary school, I'm now in my mid-40s. However, when I was in middle school, or no, I'm sorry, not middle school, elementary school, we had recess. Okay, and during recess, we would play a lot of games. Okay, as children, and some of the ways that some adults act reminds me a lot of the games that I would play as a child. Okay, and so I want to just talk about some of the things that you can watch out for when it comes to interacting with other people as an adult. Okay, now this is not all adults. All adults are not childish. However, it can be easy to spot if you know what you're looking for. Okay, childish ways can be easy to spot. One, if you're not participating in it. Okay, and two, if you just know what to look for. Okay, and so I wrote down about, and I'm looking at notes, so I wrote down about 7 or 8 different games that some people's behaviors remind me of. Okay, childish games that some people's adults behaviors remind me of. Okay, and there's this commercial that comes to mind. Trix. So Trix is a cereal, and their slogan, and I don't know whether they still make these commercials or not. However, their slogan, I believe, was "Silly Rabbit, Tricks are for kids." Okay, and again, as a lady in her mid-40s, and seeing how in experiencing the way that some adults behave, it seems as though that some adults need to be reminded that tricks are for children. Okay, not adults. Tricks for kids, not adults. Okay, games are for kids, not adults. Okay, so I want to talk to you or describe 7 or 8 games that I'm reminded of. Okay, when I see adults acting childish. Okay, so one is double dutch. Okay, so who I would call or think about as being a Mr. or Mrs. Double Dutch is somebody who needs to be in the middle of a lot of activity. They need to be right in the middle. They jump right in the middle of a lot of activity. Double dutch is a game where 2 people are holding 2 jump ropes, and they're swinging the double dutch or the ropes simultaneously. And then someone jumps in the middle, and somebody jumps in the middle of the 2 swinging ropes, and once again, this person needs to be in the middle of activity, a lot of activity. Okay, they're jumping, they turn this way, and they turn the other way. The feet are moving, the hands are moving, and there's just a lot going on. This is Mr. or Mrs. doing the most. Okay, they do the most, and they need to be in the middle of everything. Okay, so that's double dutch. All right, so that's the first game that I think of when I see people who need to be in the middle of all of the activity. Okay, Mr. or Mrs. Double Dutch. I see that more so with women. I really don't see men who need to be in the middle of a lot of stuff. Not saying that men don't, especially a masculine man. Okay, most masculine men are kind of out of the way. They don't like a lot of drama and mess. But those outside of that, descriptor, mainly women, and not all women. Okay, but more women than anything acting this way. Okay, they need to be in the middle of everything. They want to be in the middle of all of the activity. Okay, so Mr. and Mrs. Double Dutch, busybody. All right. Number 2 is Simon Says. Okay, Simon or Samisha says. Okay, so Simon Says is a game where someone, I'm sure you know what all of, I'm pretty sure you're going to know what all of these games are when I name them off. I'm not going to name off anything that you haven't heard of. But Simon Says is a game where someone, there's Simon, okay, and then there's a group, okay. And so Simon has the microphone. Simon needs everyone's attention, and Simon needs everybody to listen to him and do what they say. Okay, you know, Simon needs everybody's attention and obedience. Okay, now, as a woman, in her, again, I'm in my mid-40s. Okay, I have a brain, and you know, I know what to do. Okay, so for me, now we all need instruction, especially, you know, we will always need instructions. Okay, so it's one thing to give instruction, and it's another thing to be a person or be around a person who thinks that everyone should listen to them at all times. They need all of the attention, and they need everyone to obey. All right. That's very irritating to me. Okay. As an able-bodied, now, and there are people who want or need that. Okay. However, as an able-bodied person, able-minded person, it is very irritating to have, you know, Mr. Simon or Mrs. Samisha try to tell you what to do and how to do it, and again, all eyes on me, all ears on me, and, you know, do this. Okay. And one thing that I've noticed about people who are like that, there will be a large group who do jump when they say jump. If they say do something, when Simon says, you know, there are definitely a lot of people in our society that jump and do what Simon says when Simon says, or Samisha says to do it. And again, I'm not talking about, you know, there are times when we do need to do things in a time, you know, we will need to follow instructions. Okay. You know, there's a saying, I believe that goes, you know, do all things in decency and in order. Okay. And so in order to have decency and order, we do have to have instructions. Business has to be taken care of, how it, and so there, you know, in order to know what to do and how to do it, you do need instruction. Okay. And we do need to follow instruction. However, there are people who want all the attention on them, and again, as adults, I think it's problematic when we have a person with this type of, to me it's just very, it can get a person like that, a person who wants all of the attention or needs attention, and wants and thinks that everybody should listen to them. They can be very manipulative, and it's a game to them. Okay, I've seen a lot of people like that, and it's a game. Not only is it a game, but when they notice that you don't follow that game or play that game, then they try to, there are other things that follow when that happens. Okay. But their goal is to have all eyes and all ears on them. Okay. They want control. All right. So Mr. or Mrs. Simon or Samisha. Okay. And it's like, how old are we? You know, if we're grown, if we're adults, we should know how to do what we need to do, and nobody needs to anyway. So I'm gonna go on to the next one. Next one is clue. Okay. The game of Clue. Clue is where a person who plays the game of Clue is a person who wants you to know something, or they want a person or a group to know something. However, instead of just coming out and saying whatever it is they want that person or that group to know or to hear, they give a lot of hints. Okay, so this person loves to hint around. They love to give hints. Okay, they don't just come out as, they're very indirect. Okay, they give a lot of indirect information, partial information. A lot of times the information isn't even, anyway. But anyway, a person who loves to give hints plays the game of Clue often. Okay. So again, just very indirect, never gives information, or never just comes out and says whatever it is that they want to say. It's always a guessing game with this person. A mindset is everything. Okay, and when an adult plays childish games, believe me when I tell you that they play these games in more ways than one. Okay, a person with a childish mind plays childish games in more ways than one. All right, so it's just important to pay attention. So Clue, okay, they love to give hints, they love to play guessing games. Everything is just a big game. Okay, let's say very indirect, just a lot of guessing and he and ha and okay. So next is the whisper game. So, and I don't know whether that's what it's called or not, but I remember being in elementary school, and let's say in class, like we all sit down in a big circle, and one person, and let's say there's 20 people in that circle, and one person starts off and with saying a sentence. Okay, so you're gonna whisper a sentence into somebody's ear, and it's going to go around that entire circle of 25 people, and the goal is to see whether or not that sentence remained the same throughout that circle. I remember playing that game on many occasions, and I remember I don't recall ever seeing a circumstance where by the end of it, what was said was being continued throughout. Okay, words were added, words were completely changed, words were taken out. By the time it gets to the end, something completely different has been said. Okay, and one thing that I think about is when playing that game, I never saw anybody stop. So let's say there's 25 people, okay, and by maybe number 7, I'll say this first. You can always tell when sitting in that circle. You can always tell when somebody did not really hear or understand what was being said, because there's this look of kind of confusion or uncertainty. You can always tell when someone is not certain about what they heard, okay, when you play that game. However, I never, even though you saw that look of uncertainty, they would still say something, okay. They would go ahead and whisper something into someone else's ear, okay. And I bet that with that uncertainty, there was something that was changed, okay, because they didn't hear it correctly. I'm pretty sure that and things were probably changed prior to that. However, I never saw anybody just stop the game and say or say I didn't hear you, or I don't understand, or whatever the case may be. If there was uncertainty They didn't stop the game. I never saw anyone stop the game and stop the spread of the whatever it was. They just continued to spread it along, or pass that word along. And then by the time you get to number 24, 25, you've got a completely different story. Okay. And so same thing with gossiping. Okay. So the whisper game is like gossiping. Okay. So you spread something, someone says something and everybody's you got, several people passing this word along, and 9 times out of 10, no one, if you don't understand or don't know, what was truly said, they don't stop it. They just continue. Okay, so that's the whisper game. Okay, the spreading gossip, and you don't even know what the truth is, basically. Okay. Next is hide and seek. Okay, so hide and seek, I'm sure you know what hide and seek is. Hide and seek is a game where someone hides, and I'll just, what hide and seek is. Okay, and so hide and seek with adults, obviously hiding. Okay, there's hiding information. Hiding what? It could be hiding information. It could be, secrecy. Playing this game of trying to catch something or someone doing something. Okay, so basically it's just sneaky behavior, secrecy, hide. Just doing things that, people doing things and trying to not be seen doing it. Okay. Just basically playing this cat and mouse game. Okay, it's a cat and mouse game. All right, so that's hide and seek. Tag, you're it. Okay, tag is the next game. One thing that I think about when I think about the game of tag is celebrity gossip. Okay, if watching the news, or on the internet, or whatever the case may be, especially now that we have so many streams of media. Okay, since media is available on so many different streams now, and even prior to that, thinking about celebrities, someone would it's like the spotlight is on someone, and everyone is jumping on board. So, well, I don't know if I would describe that as tag. Well, I mean, kind of. Yeah. I mean, you're like you're it. You're the person who is to be singled out. Okay, tag, you're it. You're singled out. If the spotlight is on you, you're singled out. Or there's a group effort to excuse me, single a person out. Okay. Choking. So, anyway, like I said, I think about celebrities a lot when I think about that game. Tag, you're it. Excuse me. Next is checkers. Okay, so on a checkerboard there are two teams basically. Okay, or there's you have one person has their space as home, someone else has their space as home, and the objective is to, in the game of checkers, is to invade someone else's space. Okay, there are definitely adults who try to invade other people's space. Okay, You have your space. However, you make every effort to jump here, jump there, and make your way into someone else's space. Okay. And so to invade someone else's space means what? It means to gain access into something that does not even belong to you. For what? For what reason? So the objective is so once in the game of checkers, once you gain access to someone else's space, you are kinged. Okay, so you know, once you gain access into the home row, you say king me. Okay, and so that is an upgrade. So some people make an attempt to invade other people's space for some sort of an upgrade or some sort of a game. Okay, they try to access someone else's space or whatever for an upgrade or for gain. Okay, so that's the game of checkers. Okay, the last one is psych. Okay, that I remember again being in elementary, and you know, people, you know, we would ask kids, we would say something, okay, and then like jokingly say something, and then say psych, you know. So like I went, you know, like you have I don't know, whatever, like we would just say something and then say psych at the end. So basically it's lying. Okay. The game of psych was lying. Okay. And again, you know, as adults, as an adult, I see a lot of people doing just that. Okay, lying, telling lies. Okay, and they just flow out of their mouths, out of people's adults' mouths, just as smooth as melted butter. Okay, so again, liars. And one thing that I've noticed about liars is people don't just tell small lies. Okay, not 9 times out of 10, a liar. Again, we're talking about a person's mentality. Okay, they not only tell small lies, they tell big lies as well. So if you see a person who is dishonest, I'm not calling you baby.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay. A person who is dishonest does not just stop at small lies. Okay, liars are dangerous. Okay, I have unfortunately been in contact with people who and interacted with people who tell big lies. Okay, and I noticed the small ones. And the best thing you can do is, once you notice someone is telling small lies, leave them alone. Okay, because they don't stop there. Okay, a liar does not stop at a small lie. A liar will definitely continue, because again, it's a mindset. They don't stop at small lies. Okay, so again, childish games. All right. And I'll just go over one more time. Double Dutch, okay? Likes to be in the middle of everything. Simon Says wants everybody to do what they say do, okay? And if you do it and they don't say do it, then, or if you do it and they didn't tell you to do it, then they will see you as a problem, and you grown, okay? You're good and grown. Clue: they love to give hints, okay? They don't just come out and say whatever it is they want to say. They love to play this game of hinting around, okay? Guessing games. The whisper game, gossiping, okay? Gossiping, and you don't even know what it is. You know, you don't even know what the originating statement was, okay? However, you're still going to continue to spread it around. Hide and seek, secrecy, hiding, playing this game of cat and mouse, okay? Tag you're it. Basically, singling someone out, and they have the spotlight, and for whatever reason, there's a group effort to single someone out. Okay. Next is checkers, invading someone else's space for gain or for access or for an upgrade. Okay, so someone who is invading someone else's space. Okay. Psych, a liar. Okay. So again, what I don't understand is, as an adult, like these are all games that I played when I was in elementary school. Okay, which was for me 40 years ago, 35 years ago, long time ago. Okay, however, as a lady in her mid 40s, I see a lot of good and grown people playing these same games. Okay, and I don't get it. However, what they don't seem to understand is that tricks are for kids. Okay, tricks are for kids. All right, and so I would just encourage you to pay attention to what people do. Okay, pay attention. Be watchful. Okay, and acting childish is not a good look. Okay, we as adults, we need to set a good example for our kids and grandkids. Okay, and I see a lot of adults who don't. Okay, there are some who, never mind, I'm not gonna say that, but anyway, we don't there are a lot of people who just don't set the best example, and they play too many games. Okay, and once again, tricks are for kids. Okay, and so it's definitely time to grow up. And like I said, I would just encourage you to just pay attention. Okay, so thank you for watching. I hope you got something out of this. I hope you have a wonderful day. Feel free to comment and subscribe if you have not already. And again, thank you for watching. Bye.